Sometimes a story begins because something feels off long before anyone names it. That night, the quiet came first. We noticed the pause before the plates were set down, the way a family can sense a shift without knowing where it started. This one belongs to Marion Hale, a woman whose place at the table had never changed, even as everything else already had. This is where she begins. I remember the chair before anything else. Same one as always. Second from the end, close enough to be included, far enough to be ignored. I pulled it out and sat, smoothing my sleeve without thinking. My father liked things orderly. Chairs, conversations, people. Wine, my mother asked, already holding the bottle. I'm good, I said. Water's fine. My brother Grant was talking about traffic on the way in. Cole laughed, loud, like the house needed to know he was there. Their wives leaned in, familiar, comfortable. I watched my father line up the serving spoons so they faced the same direction. You're quiet tonight, he said to me. I'm just listening. That earned a nod. Listening had always been acceptable. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I ignored it. Then again. I pressed my thigh against the chair, a small signal to myself to stay put. Dinner at my parents' house had rules. Work waited. Before we eat, my father said, standing. His voice had that tone, the one that meant this wasn't about food. My mother folded her hands. Grant straightened. Cole's smile tightened. I took a breath and looked at the table. The scratches near my place were from years ago. A dropped fork. A rushed apology. He cleared his throat. There are some decisions your mother and I have finalized. I felt it then. Not surprise. Recognition. This is how it always went when something was about to be decided for me. Across the room, the quiet held. Even the house seemed to wait. From the side, it was hard not to notice how practiced this moment felt, how long it had been rehearsed without her. Back at the table, I kept my hand still. Marion, my mother said softly, as if volume could soften what was coming. I looked up. I'm here. And I was, fully, just not where they thought. If this sounds familiar, you already know why it stays with people. My father didn't sit back down. He stayed standing, one hand resting on the back of his chair as if it anchored him to his position of authority. Your mother and I finalized the will last week. He continued, his voice steady, practiced. It's been on our minds for a while, ensuring the legacy of what I've built remains in capable hands. Grant's fork paused halfway to his plate. Cole set his napkin down with a slow, deliberate care. My mother kept her eyes on the floral pattern of the tablecloth, her hand hovering near her glass but never quite grasping it. The core businesses will pass to Grant and Cole. My father declared, the Hale Construction Group, the restaurant portfolio, everything operational. They've proven they can handle the weight of the day-to-day. There it was. Clean, efficient. A surgical removal of my name from the family's future. Grant exhaled, a sound of pure relief he didn't bother to hide. Cole nodded, already assuming the mantle. That's the right call. Dad, Cole said, we've been in the trenches for years. We know the rhythm of the business. My mother leaned forward, her voice taking on that gentle, pleading tone she used when she wanted to soften a blow that she knew was deep. Marion, honey, this isn't about a lack of love. You have to understand that. I do, I said. My voice was a flat line. She took my composure as an invitation to justify. You've always chosen a different path. Your work is abstract, digital. You've never shown interest in the grit of real-world assets. You're smart, brilliant even, but you aren't built for the friction of this industry. Grant smiled at me, not unkindly, but with the pity one reserves for a delicate child. It's a different world. Contracts, unions, raw material surges. It's messy, loud, and constant. It's just not your wheelhouse. It takes a specific temperament to lead, Cole added, his posture straightening. I looked down at my plate. The mashed potatoes were beginning to congeal, a small white island in the center of the china. My father cleared his throat, regaining the room's focus. "We aren't leaving you without a net. Marion, we've established a dedicated trust for you, $500,000. It's structured to ensure you're more than comfortable while you pursue your projects. $500,000. To them, it was a fortune, a generous consolation prize to keep the impractical daughter safe in her downtown apartment. To me, it was less than the quarterly maintenance fee on one of my research labs. "You won't have to worry about the fluctuations of the market," my mother whispered, reaching out to squeeze my hand. I felt the table watching me. They weren't looking for an argument. They were looking for a performance of gratitude so they could eat their dinner in peace. "I appreciate the thought," I said, keeping my eyes on my father. "I know you did what you thought was best for the companies." The room exhaled. The tension vanished like smoke. "To family," Grant said, lifting his wine glass, "and to keeping things in the hands that know how to hold them." They raised their glasses. I lifted my water, the ice clinking softly against the glass, a small, cold sound in a room full of warm, comfortable illusions. Conversation moved on like nothing important had happened. Grant started talking about a supplier delay. Cole leaned back, one ankle resting on his knee, already sketching ideas in the air with his hand. "We should finally expand west," Cole said. "It's overdue." Grant nodded. "If we tighten labor costs, it's doable." My father listened, pleased. My mother passed the bread basket, careful not to skip anyone. When it reached me, I took one piece and set it on my plate without tearing it. "You sure you don't want wine?" she asked again. "I'm good," I said. "Really?" She studied my face for a second longer than necessary, then turned back to the table. Grant glanced at me. "You're quiet. I don't have much to add." "That's fair," he said, not unkindly. "Different lanes." Cole grinned. "You always hated this stuff anyway." I smiled back. Small, controlled. The phone buzzed again. This time I shifted in my chair and slipped it out just enough to see the name. Natalie. I turned the screen down on the table, face hidden against the wood. My father noticed. "Work, something like that." "Well," he said, waving a hand, "it can wait one night." I nodded. "It can." The room settled into a rhythm I knew by heart. Plates scraped. Someone laughed too loudly at a story they'd heard before. Grant's confidence filled the gaps. Cole's certainty followed close behind. I stayed where I was, listening, letting the edges pass, across from me. My mother reached out and straightened my napkin without asking. The gesture was automatic, familiar, meant to help. I didn't pull away. When the conversation drifted to next year's plans, no one asked for my opinion. That part was expected. Almost comforting. I folded my hands in my lap and kept my face neutral. This was the version of me they understood. Cole pushed his plate away and leaned forward, energized now. This was his favorite part of any dinner. Talking plans, talking scale. "We're close on Harborview East," he said, glancing at Grant. "Premium mixed use, prime waterfront, residential above, retail below. It's going to redefine that stretch." Grant nodded. "City loves it. Investors too." My father's expression softened. This was familiar ground for him. That corridor's been waiting for something like that. Cole smiled, encouraged. "Exactly. Once we close, it's steady returns for decades." I'd been quiet long enough for it to feel natural to speak, not disruptive. I took a sip of water first, gave myself a second. "The city updated the waterfront zoning corridor this morning," I said, not loud, not dramatic, just placed into the space between them. Cole blinked. "What update? They're requiring an additional 15% of the footprint to be designated as public use, walkways, access points, non-revenue generating." Grant frowned slightly. "That wasn't in the last draft." "It wasn't," I said. "It came through early today." Cole waved a hand. That kind of thing gets negotiated down. Sometimes, I said. Sometimes it doesn't. My father looked between us. What does that do to the numbers? I shrugged. It tightens them. Construction costs don't move much. Revenue does. The table went quiet for a beat. Not tense. Just paused. Cole laughed lightly. You've been reading the news again. Habit. I said. Grant leaned back. We'll run the models. I'm sure you will. My mother cleared her throat. Dessert's almost ready. The moment passed, the way moments do when no one wants to follow them too far. Cole was already talking again, shifting to timelines, brushing it off. Grant followed, comfortable in agreement. My father listened, reassured by their confidence. I picked at the edge of my plate, not hungry anymore. From the side, it probably sounded like an opinion, a casual comment, the kind you nod at and forget. I let it be that. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. Some warnings aren't meant to stop things, just to mark that you noticed. The room had settled into that heavy, post-dinner lull. Plates were pushed back. My mother was stacking them with practiced precision, as if the order of the china could maintain the order of the evening. Grant was mid-sentence, debating fiscal timelines for the new year, when Noah suddenly went still. He was quiet at first. Too quiet. His thumb hovered over his screen. Frozen. Noah. His mother. Rebecca. Said gently, "If you're done with your phone, perhaps you could help your grandmother with the weight." Noah interrupted. His voice had dropped an octave, tight and strained. This just hit the wires. A Forbes special alert. Cole let out a short, dismissive laugh. Unless the city council just voted on a Christmas tax. It can wait. Noah. It's the self-made women issue, Noah said, looking up. His eyes didn't go to his father. They came straight to me. The cover story. The ghost of Kendall Square. My father's brow furrowed. The ghost of what Noah swallowed hard, his face pale in the candlelight. Forbes is doing a profile. The first public portrait of a founder who's managed to stay off the grid for nearly a decade. Grant leaned forward, his interest piqued by the mention of the Forbes list. Who is it? Someone from the Boston Tech Corridor? Noah hesitated, then read the headline aloud. Marion Hale, the architect of Astronova. The air in the room didn't just change, it vanished. That's a coincidence, Cole said quickly, though his voice wavered. Common name. Mar. Probably some Silicon Valley type. Noah shook his head, scrolling frantically now. No, it says she's the founder of Astronova Systems. Healthcare AI. It says she's been private for 8 years to avoid the distraction of celebrity. And it's not just a profile. He paused, his voice cracking. She's ranked 47th on the U.S. self-made women list. Estimated net worth $3.8 billion. Grant stood up so fast his chair screeched against the hardwood. Let me see that. He snatched the phone. Cole hovered over his shoulder, his jaw tightening as he read the secondary stats strategic acquisitions of 3 Tier 1 pharmaceutical firms. Valuation $11 billion. The portrait finally loaded a high-resolution candid shot taken at a research summit I'd attended under my middle name. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her throat. That's... Marion, that's your sweater. I stayed exactly where I was, hands flat on the table. Unblinking. Is this real? Grant asked. His voice stripped of its usual bravado. He looked at me as if I were a stranger who had just broken into his home. Yes, I said. The silence that followed was visceral. Why now? My father asked, his voice sounding like dry parchment. The company is going public in the spring. I said evenly. Forbes has been sitting on the story under a strict embargo until tonight. I decided it was time to stop correcting the assumptions. My mother reached for my hand and missed, her fingers trembling in the air. Around us. The family didn't collapse. It just stopped pretending it knew who I was. Grant was still holding Noah's phone, his thumb hovering over the glass as he scrolled through the subsidiary list. He looked like a man trying to read a map of a city he thought he lived in, only to find every landmark had been renamed. "It says here that Astronova isn't even the top-level entity," Grant said, his voice strained. "Everything is held by something called the Vespera Blind Trust." "That's right," I said. "The trust owns the holding company. The holding company owns the assets. It's a clean break between my name and the capital." Cole turned toward me, his face flushing. "Vespera. You've been operating for 8 years under a shadow name. You didn't even use the Hale name for the parent group. I didn't want a connection that felt personal," I said evenly. "I wanted the technology to stand on its own merit, not as the project of a construction magnate's daughter." My father finally spoke. His voice was low, vibrating with a tectonic kind of shift. "Why, Marion, all this time, you let us think you were barely making rent in that apartment, because I wanted one place in the world where I was just a daughter. Dad, not a CEO, not a balance sheet. I wanted to see if you could value me for something other than what I could produce." The silence that followed was heavy with the realization that they had failed that test. Grant tapped the screen again, stopping at a specific line. "Northbridge Capital," he whispered. "This article lists Northbridge as a specialized distressed asset vehicle. It says they led the private rescue round for Hale Construction 6 months ago." My father's head lifted sharply. "Northbridge, the firm that refinanced our mezzanine debt when the banks were ready to foreclose." "Yes," I said. "They were aggressive," Cole added, his voice sharpening with a mix of awe and resentment. "They stepped in when the lenders tightened the covenants to a breaking point. They gave us the 5-year runway we needed. We thought it was a miracle." "It wasn't a miracle, Cole. It was an allocation," I corrected. "Northbridge is a subsidiary 3 layers down in my ecosystem. You wouldn't have found the connection unless you performed a full forensic ownership audit." My father stared at his hands. "You were the capital that saved us." "Yes." He shook his head, the confusion turning into a different kind of pain. "Why didn't they take a board seat? Why didn't they demand a change in management because I drafted the term sheet myself?" I said. "I insisted on a silent partner clause. No voting rights, no interference. I ensured you kept full operational control." My father's voice dropped to a whisper. "You let me keep running the company as if I'd done it myself." "I didn't want you reporting to your daughter," I said softly. "I didn't want to see your pride diminished by your own survival." The room went still a different kind of quiet this time. It wasn't just shock. It was the crushing weight of a debt that could never be repaid with money. "All this time," my mother whispered, pressing her hand to her chest. "We were talking about your safety net while you were the only reason the floor didn't drop out beneath us." Grant looked at me, his eyes searching. "And you never said a word. You never asked," I said. "And I saw no reason to correct the story you preferred to tell about me." My father stayed quiet longer than anyone else. He didn't pace, didn't sit back down. He just stood there, hands braced on the edge of the table, like the room needed him upright. "I'm not shocked by the money," he said finally. His voice sounded older than it had an hour ago. "I've seen numbers my whole life." No one interrupted him. Grant and Cole both stayed still, watching. "I'm shocked," he continued, "that for 8 years this family didn't fall apart because you were holding it together without saying a word." My mother looked at him. "Edwin." He shook his head once, not looking at her. "Let me finish." Then he turned to me. Really turned? Not the way he did when he was correcting something small. "I stood here tonight and told you that you didn't understand responsibility, that you needed a safety net." His jaw tightened, "all while you were carrying an entire system I never even bothered to ask about." The words landed hard, not loud. I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my voice even. "You made decisions based on what you thought you knew. That's the problem," he said. I never tried to know. Grant swallowed. Cole stared at the floor. My father's hands shook now. He didn't pull them away. We stayed solvent. Your brothers kept their jobs. We didn't lose the company my father built. He looked back at me. And I treated you like someone waiting for direction. My mother wiped her eyes. We thought we were helping, I know. I said, you were helping the version of me that fit. He exhaled slowly. All those times I told people you were figuring things out. His voice cracked. Just once. You were already done. I shook my head. I wasn't done. I was just quiet. Silence stretched again. Not sharp this time. Heavy. Settling. My father straightened a little. I don't know how to make this right. I looked at him. I'm not asking you to. The table stayed still. For the first time that night, no one rushed to fill the space. My father broke the silence first. We can change the will. Marion. The words sat on the table, fragile and heavy. Grant and Cole both looked up, their expressions a complicated mix of shame and sudden, sharp alertness. If you want, my father added, his voice regaining a sliver of its old decisiveness. The estate plan was built on a foundation of wrong assumptions. We can rectify it, tonight. My mother nodded eagerly, reaching for a pen near the sideboard as if she could rewrite decades of perception in a single stroke. I let the offer hang in the air just long enough for them to feel its weight. I don't want it rewritten, I said. Grant frowned. Leaning in, Marion, you're entitled to... I raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. I meant what I said before the Forbes reveal. I don't have the temperament for your world of unions and labor disputes. You've spent your lives in those trenches. You should own them. But you already own us. Technically, Cole pointed out, his voice tight. No, I corrected. Northbridge is a non-controlling, silent investment. I have no board seat, no voting power, and no desire for operational authority. I am a creditor, not your boss. You could trigger a takeover tomorrow if you wanted. Grant muttered. I could. I said, I won't. Because capital isn't the same as a relationship, and I'm not interested in owning people who only respect me because of a bank balance. The room went cold. Cole rubbed his hands together, then stopped, realizing he had nothing left to negotiate. So we keep running the companies. My father summarized slowly. Yes, and you stay in the shadow, especially after tonight. I replied. My phone buzzed Natalie with the European merger confirmation. I set it face down. I didn't need to be the CEO of Hale Construction. I was already the architect of something much larger. We didn't clean up together. My mother wrapped leftovers in quiet motions. Grant and Cole stayed seated, talking low, not about work this time. My father walked me to the door and stopped there, like he wasn't sure what came next. Drive safe, he said. I will. He nodded, then stepped back. No apology, no promise. Just space. Outside. The air felt colder than it had earlier. I slid into the car and sat for a moment before turning it on. My phone lit up again. Natalie had sent the documents. I skimmed the subject lines, marked them for later, and set the phone down. The drive back was familiar. Same turns, same lights. The city looked the way it always did at night, steady, indifferent. I liked that about it. At a red light, I thought about the chair at the table, how it hadn't moved in years, how I didn't feel lighter or heavier, just clearer. By the time I parked, the noise of the house was already gone from my head. I walked upstairs, kicked off my shoes, and set my keys in the same bowl by the door. The apartment hummed softly, the way it always did when it was waiting for me. I poured a glass of water and stood at the counter, not in a rush. The work would still be there in the morning. It always was. What changed tonight wasn't my family. Not really. It was the way I stopped bracing myself around them. Marion Hale doesn't need to be explained anymore. Not to them. Not to anyone. And most of all, not to herself. Sometimes the shift is quiet, a line drawn without being announced, a seat left empty on purpose. If you stayed with her through this, you probably know why that kind of ending lingers.